Hey BookTube, welcome to another episode of Jack's Reading Corner. I am Jack, and I'm going to do my April wrap-up and talk to you about what I'm going to read tomorrow on my day off. Okay, so first I'm going to start with the books that I no longer have in my possession because I already donated them to the Givens bookstore. And the first one I read was Carry On from March, and that is I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith, the same author who wrote 101 Dalmatians. I hate when that happens. This is a modern classic set in the 1930s about Cassandra Mortmain and her family and how they live in a ruined castle. And Cassandra is 17. She wants to be a writer, so we are told their story through her diary entries. Although it's not like Dear Diary, I blah 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 blah. It's just like excerpts from her diary about their life that day and her reflections on the events that happened during those weeks before she last wrote, after she'd last written. And you have Cassandra is not the only writer in the family. Their father, whose name I don't remember a lot of the names, also has a book that he published that was really famous, but he hasn't written anything since. And his second wife, and Cassandra and her older sister Rose, and younger brother Simon are desperate for him to write again. Because, of course, they are very impoverished. And they meet the Kahn family, who are I believe they are the owners of the land that the castle is on. And Rose sets her sights on the member of the family, Simon Kahn, who will inherit their family fortune. And she decides that she wants to marry him so that she will get out of this impoverished situation that the family is in. So, despite the warnings and reservations, Cassandra agrees to help her sister woo Simon. But eventually, Cassandra herself also falls in love with Simon. Genuinely falls in love with him. In 1 second. Sorry about that, I had to close my door. This is a very... I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was a very charming read. And it was enjoyable, I feel like, but I wasn't completely enamored by the book. I did appreciate that it wasn't that long, only had 16 chapters. But of course, when you have less chapters, each individual chapter is going to be really long, which I'm not a big fan of. But it makes me want to read the book faster. Because, I'm determined, since there's not that many chapters, I am determined, this will be easy, I can get through this really quickly. Of course, that doesn't really happen. I mean, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, in fact, I think it happens more with books where there's a lot of chapters, but they're short. Like, another book on this list is the complete opposite of that book. I liked Cassandra as the narrator, as the main character. I feel like she was very relatable. Like, I think a lot of us can relate to that experience of our first love. And a lot of us can be selfish. And I think Cassandra was a bit selfish at times. In fact, I think most of the characters were very selfish, with the exception of Simon and Cassandra's stepmother. I found it kind of weird that, like, Rose was obsessed with Simon's beard. He has a beard when they first meet him. And she is desperate to get him to shave it off. She at first like, I guess I'll get used to it, but then eventually convinces him to shave it off. And I'm like, I mean, granted, I'm not. Well, okay, maybe it's not that weird because I'm not a big fan of the really thick, burly beards. But like, I think it's kind of silly for that her obsessing over this. But I guess that's the point of that. And there's also the little subplot of Stephen, who is the character that works for the family, has a bit of an infatuation with Cassandra, but she doesn't really feel the same way about him. And she kind of, I can't think of the word. She kind of strings him along, and I felt really bad for him. But at one point, Simon, like a cousin or an aunt or something of Simon and Neil's, his Neil being Simon's brother, who she's a female photographer, and she's interested in Stephen because he's a good-looking, handsome guy, and she wants to take his picture. And whereas Cassandra doesn't, even though she doesn't love Stephen, she wants to keep. She doesn't want to. I feel like she doesn't like sharing him. And but because of course Stephen is gonna get paid, he needs the money. He goes along with this despite Cassandra's reservations. And the only thing is that I feel like the woman, this woman is worse than Cassandra, and that I feel like she doesn't really care about Stephen. She just wants to use him and exploit him. And yet she judges Cassandra and is like, "Oh, you don't really care about him. You just using him." And is telling him not to always run to Cassandra. But I think in the end her motivations weren't because she cared about him, but is because she felt like Cassandra was taking him away from her and her ability to give him a career and make him famous. So he was kind of caught in the middle. I felt bad for Stephen, So, I gave it a Goodreads, even despite my reservations. Despite my reservations about the Goodreads rating system, I do still rate books. So I gave this one 4 stars. Although I keep going back and forth between 4 and 3 stars. I almost think like 3.5 stars. It was very well written. It was very in the vein of Jane Austen, and Cassandra wants to be like Jane Austen. So it's beautifully written. It's a good story. It's a nice story. Not the most exciting, not the most thrilling story, but it was still good. So the next book I read was Revival by Stephen King, and this is actually a book I ended up getting rid of. Like I was going to keep all the Stephen King books that I read, whether it was a favorite or not. But I'm not getting another shelf anytime soon, and I'm gonna always keep buying books. I'm not gonna stop buying books, so I need to make room, and I have to make decisions on which books to donate. But this is the story of Jamie. I can't remember his last name, and Jamie lives, of course, in a small town in Maine. I mean, it's Stephen King. It's going to be set in Maine. And when he's 6 years old, a new up-and-coming young minister, happily married, has a little toddler. And he not only is a great minister that immediately everybody in the town is taken with, but he also has a passion for electricity, and in fact, he comes up with a cure for Jamie's brother Conrad, who loses his hearing all of a sudden, and uses electrical powers to heal him. And so basically, this puts Jamie indebted to this minister. Charles Jacobs is his name. But sadly, tragedy strikes, and Charles Jacobs' wife and little boy are killed in a car accident. And this of course, traumatizes Charles Jacobs. It really shakes him up, and he ends up losing faith in God and tells the congregation this in a terrible sermon, which results in him getting fired, of course, because as a man of God, you can't really say that. I mean, what's the point of you taking that job if you no longer believe in God? And this, of course, really affects Jamie, especially since he's so young, and he leaves him shaken as well. And he calls his own faith into question. And most of the book is about Jamie's life, his relationship with his family, and he gets into music, joins a rock band, and does that traditional path of being addicted to heroin. So years later, he runs into Charles Jacobs again, who is now a carnival man who will make portraits using electricity, because now that he no longer believes in God, he's devoting himself to the other most powerful thing in the world, electricity. And Charles Jacobs uses that electricity to actually cure Jamie of his addiction. And it works out, but there, of course, are side effects to this cure. And Jamie is being indebted to Charles Jacobs, becomes his assistant for a period of time while they're at the carnival. And eventually, Charles Jacobs sends him to another man he had also helped, who was in the music business. But again, even though he cured this man of something, there are side effects as well. And ever since then, Jamie has been keeping an eye on Charles Jacobs and has met all these people, who has heard of all these, and hears about all these people who have been cured by this man, by Jacobs, but some of them have consequences to their cures. And it is about these two and their lives intertwined and how they are bonded together and how Jamie can't seem to get away from Charles Jacobs. And I think that Missy from Binge Reader summed it up perfectly, that reads like a Hallmark movie. I mean, it's an interesting, engaging story, but it's cheesy at times. It's well written, though, because, it's King. He's been writing for years now. But it can be kind of cheesy and a little over-dramatic at times, and I'm sorry to say this, but sometimes Jamie's story, I agree with other people that it could seem kind of boring and tedious. And I think it would have been more interesting to follow Charles Jacobs than Jamie. I understand that Stephen King chose Jamie because he's relatable and he is like the reader, looking at from an outsider's perspective. But I think that with the direction that Charles Jacobs' arcs goes, I think it will be even more interesting to read his story and see his perspective and see his downward spiral. Because he starts out one way, he goes from one extreme to another in the story by the end of the story. And I think it would be a little more interesting to watch that and more believable, as someone else put on a Goodreads review. Now, I have mixed feelings about the ending of this book. Because I don't know if I should be offended by or bothered or offended by this ending, or I should be like, oh, it's Stephen King. Once again, he's doing a very interesting ending. And it does have some weird aspects that I feel like not everybody will like. But it's a very interesting ending. And I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about it. But, it's what Stephen King does. It does end terrifyingly so, and it's what he does best. But I think certain types of people would probably be bothered by this ending. And I am one of those people, but at the same time, I'm also open-minded. I gave this book 3 stars on Goodreads. Okay, so the next book that I read and finished is one that I actually have in my possession, and that is Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. This is the story of Mille Corvère, And when she witnesses the murder of her father because he committed treason, and then she also witnesses her mom going to prison, and then when she tries to rescue her mom goes a little crazy and kills herself. And of course, her little brother also had went to prison with her mom, but he did not survive, sadly. And Mia, because of all this, she decides she needs to get her revenge. So she goes to the infamous Red Church to be trained as an assassin, where she learns, the art of seduction, the art of disguise. She learns about poisons and weapons. And of course, you can't trust anybody at the Red Church, because all these people are ruthless assassins, or they're training to be ruthless assassins. She also has a little sidekick, and Mr. Kindly, who is a shadow cat, and he can absorb all her fears, so she can, pursue her career as an assassin without being afraid. And of course, like any story set in a school, she makes enemies, she goes to classes, some of the teachers are assholes. But then students start getting murdered. And in a school full of assassins, students trained to be an assassin, nobody's innocent. Everybody's a suspect, including Mia herself. This is like everybody else. I just fell in love with this book. It's brutal. It's beautifully written. It's a very quick read, very intense. Although the first part is kind of slow, like everybody else says, and it is a bit slow. But once you get to the Red Church, it gets very interesting. And there is some nice funny times in here. Now, I'm not an avid reader of smut, but I was good with it. Although I feel like when I read funny scenes, I kind of gloss over them. But like I said, I enjoyed the book very much. Now, the only negative is that it can be a negative, are that there are footnotes in the story that I think not everybody will like. And I feel like it can take you out of the story, because of course you're going to want to read the footnote after where it's marked. There's a footnote. You're going to want to read, you're going to want to go to that footnote and read it. But it does provide some interesting information about the story and some very snarky commentary about the story. So I like the footnotes once I get used to them. So basically, like I said, so those are the negatives. It has footnotes, which can be confusing at times and take you out of the story. Or not confusing, it can, throw you off a little bit, I feel like. And then, of course, also, the beginning is kind of slow at times. But other than that, it's a good book. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I loved it. I can't wait to read God's Grave, but of course I am taking my time and savoring that, especially because Dark Dawn is coming out just this year, finally. So, and I don't know if I'll actually buy Dark Dawn now or just wait until it comes out in paperback. I don't know, because as I said before, I'm not one of those people who's bothered by when not all my books in a series are paperback. But I can understand why it can be kind of bothersome, because it does look a little weird and odd when you have a series and not all the books are the same size. I mean, I have the Dark Tower series. I just need the last book, and I have most of the books in that. The first 4 books are mass market paperback, and then the book 5 is a trade paperback with pictures in it, and then book number 6 is smaller than, so it's like a regular size paperback, but it's smaller than the 5th one. So it looks kind of odd. Okay, now the next one, again, is another one I don't have, and that is Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. I don't know if I'm saying that right. This is a literary story. I think this would be considered literary or historical fiction, I guess, because someone told a friend of mine said that she says that literary fiction is feels like it's a story set in modern times, but it's not contemporary. I feel like literary fiction is not really contemporary. Like that has its own separate genre. But like whenever I look it up online, literary fiction is referred to something that you can't really give it a genre. So I don't know. I don't know what you would consider it. I don't know if it's historical or literary or whatever. But this is a story about see, now I can't remember this one. I should have practiced this one. Or I should have at least kept the book. Oh my god, crap. I did not prepare for this. I don't remember it that well. I don't remember the characters' names. Oh, Katie Content. A story about Katie and I'm trying to remember. Oh, this is really bad. I should prepare for this. I should have looked it up on Goodreads. Katie, it's her story in her relationship with her her roommate. I used to know the story. Well, on Goodreads, I gave it 4 stars. I don't remember. Crap. Not good. I should prepare for this one. It's okay. I'll come back to that one. I might not be able to. It's dang. I can't remember that one. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars. It was very good. It's about Katie's life and how her relationship with her roommate, and this guy that they both develop feelings for, and unfortunately, there is a car accident which results in her friend getting a broken leg, and the friend and the guy are forced to decide to, out of obligation, out of feeling guilty, he decides to pursue a relationship with this woman. And it's about kind of like Katie, how this affects Katie and how she tries to get on with her life. And as she watches their lives unfold and sees how glamorous it is, she decides to change her life. She changes her looks, gets a better job, and that's basically it of the story. And that's basically what happens in the story, from what I remember. I liked this book. It was very well written. It was an intriguing story, and it was historical fiction, so it was set during the Great Depression. And it was fun. It was reminded me of a cross between Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, both those authors, of course, I only read one book from each of them, but the dialogue reminded me of Hemingway, and the story itself reminded me of Fitzgerald. It was very fast paced, had a bit of a rhythm to the story. The chapters, again, another book where the chapters weren't that long. But I don't really have a lot to say. I mean, I enjoyed it. I was very entertained by it. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. And I do want to read his other book, Gentleman in Moscow. But because I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to like it, I want to get it at a cheap price or possibly get it from the library. But I don't know. It depends on how long it's going to be. If I get it from the library, I might buy it for a cheap price. But anyway, Rules of Civility was a great book. Really enjoyed it. A beautiful story. It's also kind of a fun story. Okay, so the next book, the rest of these I actually have. The next one is The Bane Chronicles. This one I finished really quickly because I've been reading this one on and off This is a collection of stories about Magnus Bane, one of my favorite characters from Cassandra Clare's story world of the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Magnus is a warlock, half demon, half warlock in the story, and he is charming, he is colorful. He's a very colorful past, very unique. And it's basically about all of his adventures, the ones that he references in the Mortal Instruments and in the Infernal Devices, and about how he was, his involvement in the war started by Val, in the war between that Valentine started. And there's a couple stories about his relationship with Alec Lightwood, and there's one story that's actually the last story is basically Magnus's voicemail. Now that one, I feel like you would have to read the last book. I think the last book in the series, or not the last one, the second to the last book in that series. I think in the Mortal Instruments to like get what is going on in that last little story. Although I don't remember. I think it has something to do with one of Magnus's exes. Magnus's ex, Camille. I think something about that. I vaguely remember, but I already got rid of my Mortal Instruments books a long time ago. I think I got rid of them. No, wait, I think I got rid of them while I was here, when we had already moved to the house we're in now. But I do want to get back into Cassandra Clare's world, hence why I was determined to finish this. And it was one of these ones where I finished it right before we left for my sister's, like the night before. Although it might have been midnight by the time I read it. But I only had like 2 more stories to go. Some of my favorite stories, like, I love the last one with Magnus Bane's, his voicemail. I thought some of those were really funny. Some of them were kind of sad, though. I like the fall of the Hotel Dormort. The Midnight Air was kind of cool. Like, that's where we meet the son of Tessa and I think Will. We meet their son. If you read the Infernal Devices. And the fall of the Hotel du Mort is very interesting because it introduces, I think that's the one that introduces drugs and the vampires, because it's set in the 70s, and I believe since the humans, that was a big time for drugs, and since the humans had drugs in their systems, all the vampires who would drink from their blood would get, like, they were affected, they would become high. And Magnus, because he really cares, because he really still cares about Camille, he decides to try to save her. And that's what I like, that he still cares about her, that he's willing to do this. Even though their relationship kind of ruins his relationship with Alec. I like The Last Stand on the New York Institute, where we meet a young versions of Valentine and Clary's mom, and we also get a scene when Clary's mom shows up and approaches Magnus about using that magic on Clary to hide her, so she won't ever see the Shadow World. And it's kind of about how he has been involved since the beginning with the Valentine and his mission and vendetta against the Downworlders. And then The Course of True Love First Saints is a very cute story too. It's when Alec and Magnus go on their first date, and how it really is a bad date, but it turns out alright in the end. What to Buy the Shadowhunter, who has everything and you're not officially dating, was cute. Like, he keeps trying to figure out what to buy Alec, but a lot of people have very strong opinions on that, like some of Magnus's own friends don't approve of him dating the Shadow Hunter, and are don't care about that kind of mushy stuff. The same of Rafael Santiago was we find out how he met Raphael and how he impacted his life and helped him when he became a vampire. The Runaway Queen was Magnus apparently knew Marie Antoinette and helped her escape, and I don't remember all these because it has been so long because I've read these. I spaced out when I read each of these ones, and I feel like that might have influenced why I didn't love this one. Like, it was really, I really enjoyed meeting, spending time in this world again and getting to know Magnus as a character, because he's kind of a secondary character. And most of the stories are from, like, the first series is from Clary's point of view, and then Infernal Devices is from Tessa's point of view. So we don't really know much about Magnus and his life. And this book is all about that. And it's also, like I said, there's stories about his relationship with some of the other characters, especially Alec. And it's just, they're so fun. They are very fun to read. It was cool to spend time with this character. And I like how, like, in this book, it has these comic book type images in front of each chapter, and there's a piece of dialogue or a quote from the story, and that opens the story. And of course, you have Magnus's snarky, charming commentary on situations. And it was fun. I had a fun time, and I definitely, if you are a hardcore fan of Cassandra Clare and the Shadowhunter world, and you haven't read this, then definitely recommend it. Although I'm sure if you're a hardcore fan, you probably have read this one. So now that I've done this one, I can get to Tales of the Shadowhunter Academy. I need to read that one as well. And I gave that, I think, 3 stars. I also gave the next one 3 stars, and that one was also a collection of short stories. And that was a new series that I'm getting into, The Last Witch, the series The Witcher, by Andrzej Sapkowski. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. He is Swedish or something. Let me see. Does it? Where is it? Does it say? That. I can't find it says where he's from, but he's not American. This is a translated. Basically, you have the character of the Witcher, he's like Buffy. He's kind of like a vampire slayer, where he kills monsters. And these are a bunch of short stories about some of his escapades and how he's not well liked by society, but he gets things done and he protects society. But of course, some monsters, and this is a common thing in a lot of fantasy. It shows that not all monsters are bad guys, and some of them are very human, and some of them just can't help who they are and what they do. And this is where the video game stems from, the Witcher video game. If you're a video game fan, it's very interesting. It was weird. It was very weirdly written. It didn't I feel like the transition, it didn't feel like there was a beginning, a middle, and end. It felt more like they were excerpts from the Witcher's life and his adventures. And I'm very iffy about short story collections. And that's what this was. There's another one after this as well, the Sword of Destiny. But it was a great introduction to the character. It helps you get to know the character and introduces him and what he's all about. I really liked his friend Dandelion. I don't know how to say his name. He is a troubadour. He's very entertaining, very funny, complete opposite of our main character, Geralt. That's his name, by the way. Our main character's name is Geralt. And I don't know if Geralt is a human or a witch. Or an elf. I think he's an elf. I thought he was human, and then I was like, oh, maybe he's an elf, but now I'm pretty sure he's human. And of course, it does have the rivalry between the elves and the humans in this story. I think there's a lot of stories that deal with that adversity between humans and elves. So it was fun and easy read, although I would probably need to reread it again, but it has nothing to do with it being a hard read. It's just that I read this when I was at my sister's, so there were a lot of distractions, and I rarely got any quiet time. The only time I got any peace and quiet was when my nephews took a nap. And of course my sister's at work, and so is her husband, my brother-in-law. And my mom, she sometimes would go down with the boys and nap with them, or she'd be doing something else. But and I didn't want to. My sister does have a basement, the basement where we sleep when we come visit. But I didn't want to be down there because it was dark and chilly down there. I wanted to be upstairs in the sunlight and all that good stuff. So I appreciate this introduction, and I look forward to reading the actual series. Like I said, I gave it 3 stars. And then after that, I finally finished this one, the Gotham City Sirens. My first graphic novel that I actually finished. This is about Selena Kyle, Catwoman, Pamela Isley, aka Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn. And it's about all their adventures. And it does have the Riddler is consistently in this one, and Joker makes an appearance as well because you are dealing with Harley Quinn. This is partially about Harley Quinn. Now, I'm not a comic book reader. Most of my exposure to the Batman universe was the movies that came out starting in '89. And then I watched Gotham, which has sadly ended. But I'm not going to dwell on it. But like my friend said, it is, like Terry from Florida said, it is very sad and heartbreaking that it's over, especially since we only got 12 episodes and it got canceled. But I'm looking at it as the glass is being half full. At least we got an ending. We got an ending because sometimes shows don't always get endings when they get canceled. And it was a good final season, despite the fact we only got 12. And there was so much, and to be fair, there was so much more that could have been done in the final season. But, and we also got 12 episodes, so that's pretty good. But this was just a really fun story. It's these girls kicking butt, fighting bad guys, or punishing people that they don't like. I really liked the artwork. I feel like it was very realistic artwork. It was very well done, and if you can tell, it looks very realistic. Although there was more than one artist that won the story, and it is very. And I really liked. Harley Quinn is my favorite character. She was so fun and funny and sassy, and my thing about Harley is that she is very smart. She was a psychologist. She studied psychology, but she doesn't have any common sense. That's her problem. She plays the ditz, but she's not a ditz. She's very smart. She just, I can't think of another word for it. But again, she lacks common sense. And she's a bit naive. She was easily manipulated by the Joker, but in this story, she's on her own. She's well protected by her friends, Selina and Pamela. And she's doing well for herself. Although there is a moment when the Joker comes back into her life, and one of my favorite stories in this is when the former partner of the Joker shows up and tries to get revenge and kill Harley. And unfortunately, that he doesn't win. She's saved by her friends, and they kick his ass. And it's funny. He's one of those characters that you don't like. He's like, they make him out to be that forgettable person. No one knows who he is. He's kind of a loser, actually. And the Joker shows up at her place where they are currently living at the end of the story in his, or that might happen before that. His, what is that? Not air balloon, but the blimp. And he shows up and crashes into their place and destroys it. And Pam, Ivy, and Selina are pretty pissed off about that. But here's Harley being like, "Oh my God, it means he still loves me." And it's kind of, you feel bad for her. She's kind of an idiot, but at the same time, it's like she's lovable also. Like, she's so bubbly and optimistic, and she can kick ass too. But at the same time, she's so naive when it comes to Joker, and you feel bad for her because she doesn't realize how horrible he is and how he's manipulating her so much that she can't see, who he really is, that he's an abusive jerk and he's psychotic. But she herself is also kind of crazy too. Like I said, Riddler is heavily featured in this issue and in this graphic novel, and he is a detective right now. He is the detective in the story, helping, because the Riddler loves solving crime, solving puzzles, and Batman is currently gone in this one. Well, I think someone else has taken Bruce's place as Batman. I think it is. Now, that's the only down. I feel like you can read the Gotham graphic novels, the Batman graphic novels, as standalones. But, because they do have beginning, middle, and end, but there are aspects of it that are a little confusing. And I think you have to have a foreknowledge of the Batman world. And so I think that's why I was able to still get into and understand what's going on, because I already had at least a little bit of knowledge, even though most of my knowledge is it was those movies. Terry from Florida is a huge Batman fan, or not a huge fan. She doesn't love everything in the universe. There's only certain characters like Selina Kyle, Penguin. Yeah, I think it's just those two that she really loves. Possibly, of course, she still reads about the Joker and the Riddler and all that. But I think Penguin and Selina are the ones that she reads the most from. But she knows a lot of this information. I also have looked up on the internet, I looked at who all the Batman villains were, which they had some silly. There are the Rogues Gallery in Batman universe is huge. And some of them are just plain, I was reading them, I was like, really? That's a villain? Kind of silly, actually, but I guess that's what happens when you get so many, because there's only so far your creativity will go. But I had fun. I have another Batman-related graphic novel, which features, I think all the Batman villains are fighting each other, or at war with each other or something. And this one also, at the end of the last story, actually brings in her sister. Selina has a sister, Maggie, and something's going on with her. she's a little on the crazy side, even more crazy than Selena is. In fact, Selena is the sane one, I feel like. And, because of this and because I want to get more into the Batman universe, I think that's why I'm reluctant to read Sarah J. Maas's Catwoman Soul Stealer. I'm a little reluctant because it's like, I almost feel like it's not, I want the Batman version, I don't want, and I know from what I've heard about it, my Terry, even though, yeah, she's a Selena fan, I don't know if she would really like it. I mean, maybe she would, but I'm pretty sure she would not like it from what I've heard. I could be wrong, but I might buy it one day or borrow it from the library or something, and we'll see. I'll check it out myself. I don't know. Maybe I won't. Maybe I won't. But I did give it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I love the artwork. I love getting to know these characters even more. And then last but not least is I just finished Lincoln and the Bardo, a literary book that won a Man Booker Prize a couple years ago. Yes, I appreciate that the stickers are not covering the title. Like, I'm willing to tolerate stickers as long as they don't cover the title. Or faces, if there happens to be an image on the cover, a face of someone on the cover. And this is a story about President Lincoln and how his son Willie, a year into the Civil War, had died. And he is visiting the grave. He constantly visits the cemetery where his son is buried. And not only do we see the public's view of Lincoln during this time, but we also spend time with Willie and all the ghosts that are in the cemetery. And we see their perspective on things. And Willie does not realize that he's dead and believes that his father will continuously come back. And that's why he has not moved on to heaven. This is a very beautiful story. It's kind of sad. It's very tragic. And the way I describe it is, it's like a script, but it feels like a poem as well. Like when you read it, it feels like it's something that should be read out loud, or at least I feel like I should consider the audiobook, or at least someone else should consider the audiobook. Let me see. See how it's written like with a script dialogue, but the way I read it, I hear it like it has a bit of a rhythm to it. Like, especially when you're with the ghost characters. And there's also some excerpts from other people, like the servants in the Lincoln household, and like I said, the public. And Lincoln had quite a tough time during this time. I mean, his son just died, and everyone is giving him a hard time because, of course, this is during the Civil War. And it's very heartbreaking, and it just breaks my heart reading about, what they go through and the grief that they experience. To the point where it changes his physical appearance. This is it's... What else can I say? I just really loved it. Sometimes though it was a little confusing at times. And it took me a minute to figure out what was going on with the characters. And it's despite the fact that I think it has over 100 chapters, it's a very fast read because of the way it's written. And I like how it deals with, not just with grief, when you lose a loved one, but it also deals with how, if we could see the ghost, how hard it must be for the spirits of the people that died. They are no longer a part of this world, and they can only watch it from a distance. And if you didn't live a good life, when you're dead, you have to live with that. Not in the not in the literal sense, but you can't ever change your past. You can't change what happened. You are no longer that person anymore. You are just the spirit of that person. So you have to live with the consequences of all the bad things you've done. And you know, these ghosts can't remember. They remember bits and pieces of their lives. But like we have one character, Reverend Everly Thomas, and he does not understand why he's stuck here. He's still stuck in this sort of purgatory state, and he doesn't know what he did in his previous life, that he can't get into heaven. So it deals with a lot with memory, and like I said, how hard it is for the spirits of the dead. And there's the obvious grief that it deals with, and it's a very, like, it's just so compelling, such a compelling read, and you just want to keep going and find out, like, if Willie is able to ever move on, and will his father and mother heal. And of course we know this is Lincoln is a real person, so we know that what it will happen. We know eventually what happens to him. So I don't know what else. Honestly, I don't know what else to say about it. I just really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I read it. And like I said, I got through with it within, I think, a week. But of course, I'm a slower reader, so some people might get through it within a day. So those are all the books I read in April, including the ones I no longer have in my possession. So what I'm probably going to read on my day off tomorrow is I'm going to finish reading The Lies of Locke Lamora, which is really getting really good. Locke is being forced to pretend to be the Grey King, and he had to because the Capper Barsavi wanted him and John to go meet with the Grey King, be there for the meeting with the Grey King. Locke had to pretend to be sick. So they go to this woman, I guess she's an alchemist, and give him this stuff that will make him sick. It's kind of gross. And in the past, Chains has sent, like, tells Locke, I know you aren't a fighter, you aren't the strongest fighter, you're small and you're clever, but you're not a fighter. And he also sends Jean on to the special school to train as a fighter because he could be the muscle of their little gang. Especially since he has quite the temper and is capable of beating someone to a bloody pulp. We have not met Locke's love interest because I get the impression, of course, that there is a love interest. The one female member of the Gentlemen Bastards. We have not met her yet. I'm wondering if we are going to meet her in this one, or if she's not going to come in this story, but maybe she'll come in Red Seas Under Red Skies, the second book, which I'm hoping I will get for my birthday, but I don't know. And I also started reading Good Omens, which is a book that I am reading that is going to be a TV show that will be coming out in May, I believe. I think it's on one of those streaming networks, but I'm not sure. But this is about the apocalypse, and that they lose the Antichrist, and this demon Crowley and an angel whose name I cannot say team up to stop the apocalypse and to find the Antichrist before someone else does. And I hear that's really funny, and and I know that in the TV show that David Tennant and Michael Sheen are going to play the demon and the angel. And, I've heard a lot of good things, and so far I've read 2 books by Neil Gaiman that I liked, I enjoyed, and then I haven't read Terry Pratchett. Well, I've read 1 book by Terry Pratchett, but but I gotta admit, it's one I didn't like. So I can't wait to read this, and I like how this one feels. I don't know, it feels this, it's all smooth and stuff. And then I'm also going to read, and continue to read, Sarah Waters is a Little Stranger. Which I think it's a ghost story. Like a haunted house story. And this doctor is come to, it's about this doctor's relationship with these rich people who own this house. And like I said, I think there's gonna be a ghost in the house of someone who died, obviously. As usual, and just like The Paying Guest, the writing is beautifully done, and I can really picture what's going on. This is post-war, so I think it's after World War One. I want to say. So I will continue getting into this, and then there's of course other books that I want to read tomorrow, or that I want to read in May. And I think I'm going to take some books off my shelf and read those. And then there's books like The Conjuring of Light and The Kitchen God's Wife and My Lady Jane are books that I'm thinking about I need to read. Like The Kitchen God's Wife, I definitely need to read and get that one done, and The Conjuring of Light as well. So I want to get these done before June, because it's when our cruise is. So, that's my April wrap up, and what I'm going to read tomorrow. Would love to know what you guys are reading. Feel free to share in the comments below, and I hope this video uploads, because I'm seeing it looks pretty long of a video, so who knows, I might have to redo it again. I hope not. But if you guys like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up and click subscribe if you haven't. And as always, I hope you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye!